So this is a video on how to paint the Deredeo. Now we built that in a previous view, and if you look on the channel, you can probably find the video of where we put it together. It's completely magnetized, so we could build it with the Butcher cannons as well as with the Hellfire Plasma Cannonade. So we can do either or. We've decaled it as the 20th Legion because we are Alpha Legion. So if you're interested in having yours look like this, please feel free to stay tuned, and you will definitely see how we painted her up to look like this. Cheers! So this is our video on how to paint our Deredeo. And the first thing we've done is we've spray coated it with Corax white. Now, we're going to paint this as Alpha Legion, but earlier today I was really thinking we were going to do it as Death Guard. So unfortunately I primed it planning on doing it green, but we should have primed it with Chaos Black for the Alpha Legion for the metallics. So we're going to have to paint over the white with the metallics and do it that way. So normally we would have done this with Chaos Black, but in this case we've done it with Corax white. So our first step I think we're going to do is start doing anything that's going to be gray as a base. So we're going to take our Mechanicus standard gray, and we're going to go over anything that we think will ultimately be gray. So that'll be the back half of the Havoc launchers here, as well as some of the mountings for the guns, and the shoulder joint here as well. Not the joint itself, but just this piece. And then a few other pieces around. We're going to do all that with the Mechanicus gray before we move on to the metallics and get the base coat down there. So we'll do that. We'll come back here and we'll see exactly what we managed to cover. So this is our unit now that we've finished with our Mechanicus standard gray. So what we ended up doing was we did the back half of the missile launcher on the back, leaving a couple of these vents that we're going to make metallic later. We're going to do the top with a different color, but I wanted the back half in one dark color. We did the mountings of the guns, except for the joint itself, the two insets on the autocannon. And on the plasma cannonade, we did the whole back piece, as well as the insets here, and the front pieces here. I didn't want to put any specific color to match the Deredeo itself, because I think I'm just going to use that once in a while on any number of different ones. So I wanted this one to be generic, whereas these guys the autocannons were going to match to the specific model. So that's our Mechanicus standard gray. I also did the underside of the chassis and just the inside where the cockpit where the pilot will go. So our next step, what we're going to do is start working on all of the Alpha Legion metallics, as well as all the joints, the screws, everything. It's all going to be metallic, and then we'll glaze blue teal over all the armor pieces. So pretty much everything that's left is going to go a base coat of Leadbelcher. So we'll probably do a couple of thin layers, really spread it around. We're not going to do the, probably not going to do much on the plasma cannonades. We'll see where we end up when we're finished with that. But most of what's left here will be done Leadbelcher silver. So this is our units after we finish with the metallic coat of Leadbelcher. And what we've got left are these cablings here, as well as the plasma coils. So the first thing we'll do is these cabling, and what we'll do is do it with a little bit of Eshen Grey, which is a tiny bit more blue than the standard gray. So we're going to use that just to color in these cabling, and then we'll come back here and we'll deal with the rest. So this is what it looks like now that our cabling is done with the Eshen Grey, and we've got all that finished. So now what we're going to do is move on to these plasma coils, and what we're going to do with those is give them a coat of Moot Green, which is a very, very bright green. And so all we're going to do is take our detail brush and just run it along the edge there. We're going to try to be careful not to go on the metal, just because we've taken the time to make the metal work where we wanted it to be. So we'll finish this, and we'll be back here in a few minutes. So these are our parts now that we've finished the Moot Green, and as you can see, we've got our plasma coils already done, and then we've also put a little bit of green in each of these circles because aesthetics. So now what we're going to do is shade everything with Nuln Oil. So what we're going to do is shade most of the gray fairly dark. We're going to shade the silver about medium level, and we're going to lightly shade the green, just because we want to highlight each of those individual lines. Whereas the gray we wanted a bit more bold, and we're going to need quite a bit of shade to shade over the dark gray to get some of those details to come out. So we're going to do all of that shade with Nuln Oil now, and we'll show you what it looks like at the end. So these are our units after we finished our shade, and as you can see, all of the details have been brought out now in all of the pieces, as well as the grooves on the plasma coils are nice and visible now. And so are all of the details in all of the gears and the pieces of the main chassis. So now what we're going to do is light this all back up, and what we're going to do is a two-fold set. We're going to use Iron Breaker on all of the things that are going to stay metallic looking. So that's all of the framework and all of the gears and cogs, most of the guns, the barrels, the ammunition, things like that. And then anything that's going to go Alpha Legion blue is going to get a layer of Runefang steel, which is going to make it a little bit brighter than the Iron Breaker, as you can see, because we're going to glaze over that, and we want that as bright as we can get. So we'll do both of those, dry brushing, and we'll meet back here when we're finished. So this is our Dreadnought now that we've finished the Runefang steel, and what we're going to do now is move on to the Iron Breaker on all these side weapons here, as well as all the ammunition belts and most of the machinery in the back of the Dreadnought as well. So we'll do that now, and we'll meet back here. So this is our unit now that we've finished with the Iron Breaker, and as you can see, we did all of the trim here, as well as added the light up layer on the plasma gun on both ends. We went a little over, doesn't matter because we're coming over the gray in a little bit. We did just the machinery here and some cords, all of the vents. And then we did all of the gears and mechanics that move the legs, as well as the waist and the torsos. And then we did both autocannons, just lighten them up a little bit. But as you can see, there's definitely a difference in the brightness from the Iron Breaker and the Runefang steel. And then we also did all of the under chassis weapons with Iron Breaker as well. So now what we're going to do, now that that's finished, is all of the armor pieces that we've done with Runefang steel, what we're going to do is glaze them first with Guilliman blue. So we're going to go over each one of these little armor pieces, just like so. Now if this was a Grey Knight, this would be all we would be doing, but because it's Alpha Legion, we're going to do a whole lot more blue than this. Don't worry, that's a very, very thin layer, because that's sort of the plan. We're going to build this up with at least 2 layers of Guilliman blue. Maybe trickier more so because of all the flat pieces. We may need a little bit more and put it on a little bit thinner than we do for normal Space Marine power armor. We'll keep at this and we'll meet back here in a few minutes. So that's what it looks like after our first coat of Guilliman blue. I actually overdid it on this one and went a little heavy, which is why it's much more blue, but everything else We did a very, very, very light brushing, which got just a base tiny bit of blue on it. So what we're going to do is do another coat of Guilliman blue and see if we can bring that out even a little bit more. So that's what it looks like after the second coat of Guilliman blue glaze. So it's definitely starting to stand out a little blue. We're probably going to put one more third really, really light layer on this just to get it a little bluer, at least so it matches the overcoat we did on the legs here. So we'll do one more and then we'll meet back here. So this is our third shade of Guilliman blue, and as you can see, we've got a nice rich blue color forming. So now what we're going to do is add the tealish to it. So we're going to take a little bit of Waywatcher Green, and we're going to do the same thing with this glaze as we did with the Guilliman blue glaze, going over everything that is blue now. So as you can see, we're just going to take a little bit, and we're just going to dry brush that or lightly brush that right over, giving us our teal color finally. And this may take 2 coats as well, just to get the color we want. We'll know more when it dries, and we'll see what kind of shade it ends up being. So we'll finish this, and we'll meet back here in a few minutes. Here's how it looks after its first coat of Waywatcher Green, and it definitely has a bit of a teal component to it. We're going to repeat the Waywatcher Green and put a second coat on now, and then see where we end up. So these are our units here after we finished our second coat of Waywatcher Green, and they have a nice green tinge to them now. One piece of note, make sure each layer is dry before you move on, because what happened here is we ended up taking off a little bit of the undercoat. We'll have to patch that when we do our next layer of Guilliman blue, which we're going to do just to clean up the green and add a bit more blue to it. So we're going to do that now, and we're going to put a little bit extra here. It's not the end of the world because we are going to put a decal over both of these Havoc Launcher barrels, but it is good to note that you do want to make sure these are very, very dry before you brush over them. Alright, so we'll do that now. We'll meet back here in a few minutes. And now that we're finished with the Guilliman blue and we've got the final color we like, we're going to clean up the mess. So we're going to start with Mechanicus Standard Gray, and we're just going to go over everything we had already painted that color, just to clean up any of the areas that metal and silver had got over it. We don't want to get rid of where we washed it, so we want to keep the details. So it's more of a dry brush just over the very top surface. So we'll do that now on all of the areas, getting all of these little bits that we overcolored, and we'll meet back here once it's all cleaned up. So now that we've finished coloring over all of the Mechanicus Standard Gray, what we're going to do now is take a little bit of the Iron Breaker, and we're just going to go over any of the metal pieces that may have been colored over, as well as adding the highlights to all of the little bolts that are throughout the chassis. Just like so. So I'll keep doing those, and we'll clean up any of the spots where the gears get covered over. And we'll meet back here in a few minutes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of Retributor Armour and add a third color to our models. We're going to do all of these coils on both of the Butcher autocannons, as well as the fuel line pipeworks for the flamers, and this cooling coil here, and possibly this dial on the top here, and maybe a few other things around with this gold, just to add a flecking of an extra color in there, just to mix it up a little bit. So we'll do that now, and we'll meet right back here. So this is our unit now that we've added the gold trim to the guns, and as you can see, they really stand out a little bit nice there. We also did a little bit of gold just on these spike vents over here, as well as doing some on the cartridge expel slots on the front of those. So we did a little bit of gold here and there. We also did the bolters, ammunitions, and then we did some of the trim on the flamers leading up to the front spouts there. And then we also did just these little bulbs on the inside of the Hellfire cannonades. And I just picked some random pieces to do otherwise. So we've done those. What we're going to do now is a edge highlight on the gray, and we're going to do it with Dawnstone. So all we're going to do with our Dawnstone is we're going to just take a little tiny bit on our brush. We're just going to trace along all of the edges of everything that's gray. And Dawnstone will dry a little lighter. So it'll light it up when it dries. So we're going to do that for the rest of the model, and then we'll meet back here in a little bit. So with our edge highlight finished, you can see that the black color is starting to, or the gray color is starting to fill in nicely. The armor is still not where I'd like it to be. It's fine, it's the right color, but I think I'd like it to be a bit more wet appearing. It looks much nicer when it's wet. So I think what we're going to do is put a little bit of a gloss coat on it. So we're going to take some Ard Coat, and with a very light coating, I'm just going to cover everything that's teal colored on our units here, just to make it a little bit more wet looking. Now, Ard Coat will make it very wet looking, but we're going to use a matte finish over the top of it, so that'll make the gloss come down a little bit. I think what we're going to do is mix this with some Flow-Aid, just to get it running a little bit better. So we'll probably put it in a separate container before we move on to the rest. So we mixed it with Flow-Aid, and this is going on much, much smoother. It'll also thin it out a bit so it won't be as shiny. Because it helps the colors blend visually more when they're wetter. So we'll finish this model and we'll meet back here afterwards when we'll start on another color. As you can see, the diluted Ard Coat did a great job of putting that metallic sheen back in, and it's on all of the pieces now. So what we're going to do is do the missiles in the missile launcher, and what we're going to do with that is a little bit of Mephiston Red and a detail brush. And we're just carefully going to do each of the missiles in the holders. Trying not to hit the metal parts. So we'll do those and we'll meet back here after they're all done. So that's what it looks like once we've finished all the missiles with the Mephiston Red. And as you can see, we've colored them right up to the space where they exit the holes. And that way it's a complete look. And it does look like they extend further inside. Like so. I'll do the tips a couple of times just because they tend to get lighter. There's less surface area for the paint. So that's what we've got for our missiles. So we'll leave those dry and we'll meet right back here again. So while we're waiting for all of that main dreadnought to dry, we're going to come back to the cannonade here, or the plasma weapon, and what we're going to do is fix up the coils, because that's the last thing we haven't done yet. So we're going to take a little bit more Moot Green, And with a detail brush, we're just going to slowly go over each of those coils, trying our best not to fill in the groove that we filled with Nuln Oil so many hours ago. Like I said, we're just trying to bring that green back out, because there's many spots we went over it with the metallic, which wasn't intentional. So we'll keep going at this, and we'll meet back here in a few minutes. And now that we've got our Moot Green finished on our plasma cannonade, what we're going to do now is start lightening it up. So we're going to take a little bit of Nurgling Green, which is definitely lighter. And we're going to just do the tops. Trying to keep the pits where the Nuln Oil was at. So we'll keep at this for a little bit, and we'll come back when it's done. So this is our plasma cannonade after we finish with the Nurgling Green. As you can see, it's a little bit lighter on the top. Same as on the bottom. It lightens up just a little bit there. So we're slowly making an increased light pattern as we get higher up. So we're going to do this one, and then we'll meet back here again. Now that we're finished with our Nurgling Green highlight, what we're going to do is take a little bit of white scar and do the same thing, but just at the top edge itself. Take a little tiny bit. Like so. So we're going to keep doing that until the very crest of both of these coils are done, and we'll meet back here and see what it looks like. So here's our finished plasma cannonades, and as you can see, we've got a very light top to them that melds down into the green shade. So we've got a lighter coil and then a darker coil as we go down. So it would have been nice if they stayed in a nice line. Some of these are great, like this bottom one here. The top is a little bit rough. This one is great, and the top is all right. But they're there, and they're magnetized, and they can drop into place fairly easily, like so. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some decals, some transfers to our Deredeo Dreadnought, and then we'll meet back here, but that's almost one of the last few steps that we have to do. So this is our Deredeo now that we've finished. As you can see, we've based him, and we've also added a lot of the decals from the transfer sheet from the Chaos Space Marines. So we've put some up on the Havoc Launchers, high rise in one and on the other, as well as a couple of double X's because it is the 20th Legion, Alpha Legion, and then a few more down on the legs and on some of the other weaponry and things like that. So that's our Deredeo as it stands now. It is magnetized, so we can swap weapon loadouts. So as you can see here, we've got the Butcher Cannon armaments as well. And that gives us our full options. It's got the heavy bolters on the under chassis, but it also has the flamers. Yeah, so that's our unit. I hope yours turned out as nice. And if so, give a like to the channel, or leave a comment and subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and you'll see the next few videos we bring out. Otherwise than that, cheers, and we'll see you on the next run we do.